Welcome to episode 53, How the Mind Works. Please make sure closed captioning is on to better follow what I'm saying. You know, many years ago when I first came to live in the US, I used to buy cars at police auctions. They were relatively cheap, so you didn't need comprehensive insurance, just liability, and it was what I could afford at that time. I bought about four cars that way, paying between $350 and $1,600 if I recall correctly. One was actually stolen after my spouse parked it while at work. A couple of them were lemons. I remember one in particular that had some radiator problems and broke down regularly. One day, me and a buddy were driving from Brooklyn to Queens when it shut down after we stopped at a light on the South Conduit near Linden Boulevard. After I made a quick assessment of how much I'd paid for it, the repair costs to date, the costs of a tow, and the repair costs to come, we got out, pushed it onto the grass, and abandoned it. But I remember one, an Isuzu SUV that was strong enough for a family road trip to New York, from New York to Alabama and back. Going, we took several days, passing through Maryland, Virginia, the Carolinas, and Georgia. After a week in Birmingham, coming back, we mostly drove nonstop except for an overnight stay in Tennessee. But Tennessee to New York was about a 15-hour nonstop stretch that stressed the engine too much, and the Isuzu was never the same. So I made a deal with my sister where she would make the down payment on this car. I would then pay the monthly payments and the insurance for 2 years, after which the car would be hers. It worked out fine, and that Mitsubishi Colt was the first new car I owned for 2 years. I'm relating all this because I was reminded of police auctions and the Colt recently while talking with a friend who I've known for many years and who had also bought a car at a police auction back in those days. Unfortunately, his car was stolen right after he bought it when he parked it by the apartment building where I was living at the time. It wasn't my fault, but I still felt bad because, in a way, he had sort of left the car in my care. My friend and I were talking and reminiscing about those times recently because we were considering changing cars. Since the police auction days and the Colt, I've always bought or leased a new car. My friend, on the other hand, has always bought a used car. Not because he couldn't afford a new car or to lease one, but because he did not want to be saddled with the monthly payments of a car loan or lease. But our conversation wasn't just about cars and police auctions. He was somebody who, like me, had a generous spirit, and we were comparing notes on how so many of our so-called friends had abused our generosity and friendship over the years. We had learned the hard way that when many of these quote unquote friends ask to borrow $200, it's best we lend only $50 because it was never going to be a loan but a gift. He recounted how he used to regularly give, just out of kindness, $40 or $50, sometimes $100 to this family friend who he had known for years and who came to the US after him and had it rough for a while. So one day the dude asked to borrow $200 and my friend loaned him 40 because actually that was all he himself could spare at that time. But the dude then proceeded to badmouth him to mutual friends and stopped talking to him. My friend thought of all the money he was going to save because the dude wasn't talking to him anymore. And then he and I wondered just what could have been going through the dude's mind. I mean, you can understand why he might always be asking for money. Some people are just built like that. and feel that if you have more than them, you owe them some of what you have. But he was prepared to lose a regular source of funds because he was upset that he only got $40 instead of $200. We couldn't understand the dude. What mental process caused him to react that way? It's just not logical. I'm not a, I'm not gonna call a mostly successful con artist stupid, although everybody does stupid things sometimes. So I'm just gonna chalk up his actions as being the result of overwrought self-centeredness. How the mind works is a curious thing indeed. But when we consider the $40 guy, we see someone whose actions seem counterproductive to his survival. Logically, if survival is a basic instinct and the purpose of life is to survive, you would think every human would be doing things to maximize their survival. But not all do, for various reasons, I think. And unfortunately, most of the reasons I can think of seem to be negative ones, based on ideology, which can be externally driven by politics or religion, or internally driven by blinding self-centeredness or selfishness. To me, ideology can warp the mind, leading people to behave illogically when it comes to maximizing individual and sometimes collective survival. It's a brainwashing of sorts that is a part of mankind's past, present, and future. The amount of stuff going on today with seemingly sensible people taking illogical, unscientific positions after being indoctrinated by their favorite media outlet or favorite online group makes you really wonder how the mind works. So, are there scenarios where, when it comes to survival, man act illogically out of good-heartedness? I don't know. But what I'll say is that I can't think of any. For instance, wasn't my friend minimizing his individual survivability by constantly giving money to this $40 guy? I don't think so, because I don't think sacrifice is counterproductive to individual survival if you can afford it. In fact, it would seem to be fully the opposite. Helping others when you can afford it benefits your survival too. However, harking back to episode 2, Faith versus Good, martyring yourself is not something you can afford. So, what's with this blog episode that started off talking about cars and police auctions? Internal joke. No doubt your mind is warped, Paul. Well, the way I see it, people acting illogically in ways that seem adverse to survival is not the same as people sacrificing logically or otherwise in ways that enhance group survival, because I would disagree that both are instances of man not prioritizing individual or collective survival. But I do feel that both types of behavior have something in common at their core. They signal that man sometimes act outside of, or perhaps overcome, the survival of the fittest concept, for bad or good.